The dawn mist clung to the ancient pines as Ranger Thomas Reed made his way up the mountain trail, following what looked like a meteor strike from the previous night. 23 years of experience told him something was different about this one. Meteors didn't usually leave trails of iridescent blue fluid on tree bark, nor did they typically scatter what appeared to be fragments of polished metal across the forest floor. The peculiar debris led him deeper into the Cascade Mountains, far from his usual patrol route. The morning sun barely penetrated the thick canopy, but something ahead cast an ethereal purple glow through the fog. Tom gripped his walking stick tighter, his other hand instinctively checking the satellite phone at his belt, though something told him no ordinary emergency services would suffice for what lay ahead. He emerged into a freshly carved clearing and stopped dead in his tracks. Before him sat what could only be described as a spacecraft, its silvery hull etched with swirling patterns that seemed to move in the morning light. The vessel, roughly the size of a small yacht, had carved a path through the forest before coming to rest against a cliff face. A faint humming emanated from within, accompanied by occasional sparks from what appeared to be its damaged propulsion system. "Well," Tom muttered to himself, "this is definitely above my pay grade." A sound from within the ship caught his attention, a soft cry of pain that, despite its distinctly musical quality, was unmistakably a call for help. Tom's training kicked in, overriding his astonishment. Injured party in the wilderness, that was something he knew how to handle, even if the party in question might not be from Earth. He approached carefully, finding a tear in the hull large enough to squeeze through. The interior was surprisingly organic in design, with corridors that curved like river channels and surfaces that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Following the sounds of distress, he made his way to what appeared to be a control chamber. There he found her. The figure slumped over a crystalline console was humanoid but unmistakably alien. Her skin shimmered like mother of pearl, shifting through subtle colors as she breathed. Intricate patterns spiraled across her exposed arms, glowing with an inner light that pulsed in time with what he assumed was her heartbeat. A formal garment of flowing material that seemed to capture and reflect starlight lay torn and stained with luminescent azure fluid. "Easy there," Tom said softly, raising his hands in a universal gesture of peace. "I'm here to help." The alien's head rose, revealing eyes like liquid mercury. They fixed on Tom with an intensity that made his breath catch. She spoke, her voice carrying notes impossible for human vocal cords to produce. A small device on her wrist flickered to life, projecting a holographic display. She touched several symbols with elegant fingers, and suddenly English words formed in the air between them. "I am Princess Lenara of the Stellar Concordat," the translation read. "My ship was sabotaged. They are coming." As if on cue, a deep thrumming filled the air, the sound of massive engines high above the cloud cover. The princess's skin paled to an almost translucent white, fear evident even on her alien features. "Who's coming?" Tom asked, already moving to help her up. "The Void Hunters," the holographic text displayed. "They will not stop until I am dead and the Concordat falls into civil war." Tom glanced between the injured princess and the ominous sound growing louder above. He'd spent his entire career making split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death in the wilderness. This might be on a slightly larger scale than usual, but the basics were the same: someone needed help, and he was the only one around to provide it. "My cabin's about 3 miles from here," he said, carefully supporting her weight. "Off-grid, well hidden, stocked with supplies. Can you walk?" Lenara straightened, dignity evident in every movement despite her injuries. "I am a daughter of the stars," the translator displayed. "I can walk." As they made their way into the forest's cover, Tom couldn't help but smile. Alien royalty or not, he recognized the steel in her bearing, the same determination he'd seen in countless survivors he'd rescued over the years. The thrumming grew louder, and shapes like liquid shadow began descending through the clouds. "Trust me," Tom said, leading her along a nearly invisible game trail. These mountains have been hiding people for thousands of years. Let me show you how we do things on Earth. And so began the strangest rescue in Thomas Reed's career, one that would change not only his life but the relationship between Earth and the stars forever. The old cabin had never felt so alive. Tom watched as Princess Lenara studied the rough-hewn walls with undisguised fascination, her pearlescent skin reflecting the warm light from the fireplace. Her wounds, dressed with his basic first aid supplies, now glowed a softer blue, which he hoped meant healing rather than deterioration. Your dwelling, her translator projected, it's made from actual organic matter. Real trees. Built it myself, Tom replied, checking the shutters one more time. Outside, the mountain storm he'd been tracking for days was finally rolling in, right on schedule. Perfect timing, the heavy rain would mask their heat signatures, and the thunder would cover any sounds they made. Been adding to it for 15 years. On my world, such resources would be worth more than this entire structure in processed materials. Lenara ran her fingers along a wooden beam. Yet you shaped them by hand, preserved their natural form. Fascinating. A distant boom echoed through the valley, not thunder. Tom recognized the difference immediately. The Void Hunters were methodically sweeping the area, using some kind of energy weapon to probe the deeper forests. He'd already spotted their search drones, sleek black shapes that moved like liquid shadow through the canopy. Your pursuers, Tom said, setting down 2 mugs of hot tea. Tell me what we're really dealing with here. Lenara's skin shifted to deeper blues and purples. He was beginning to recognize this as her equivalent of a troubled expression. She accepted the tea with graceful hands, studying the steam rising from the ceramic mug. The stellar concordat spans 3,000 solar systems, her translator displayed. For 10 millennia, we have maintained peace through a balance of technology and tradition. My father, the High Sovereign, has ruled wisely. But there are those who believe our civilization has grown, stagnant. Another explosion, closer this time. Lenara's hand trembled slightly, ripples forming in her tea. The Void Hunters serve a faction that wishes to replace our democracy with direct AI governance. They believe organic life is too inefficient to rule. My death would throw the Concordat into chaos, paving the way for their revolution. Tom absorbed this, remembering similar patterns from Earth's own history. And they sent their best killers after you. The most advanced hunting units in known space, Lenara confirmed. Cybernetically enhanced beings with quantum tracking capabilities and weapons that can reduce matter to its component atoms. She looked at him with those mercury eyes. I should not have involved you. They will show no mercy to a primitive species harboring their target. Tom couldn't help but smile at that. Primitive, huh? He moved to a worn chest in the corner, pulling out what looked like old hunting gear. Let me tell you something about Earth's history, Your Highness. Every empire that's ever existed has eventually run into what they considered primitive peoples. And you know what they learned? Advanced weapons don't mean much when you don't understand the terrain. Working quickly, he began laying out his equipment, topographical maps, weather-worn camping gear, and items that looked handmade. Your hunters have quantum tracking? Great. Let's see how it handles the mineral deposits in these mountains, iron, copper, rare earth elements all playing havoc with their sensors. Those shadow drones? They're still affected by wind patterns, which I've been mapping in these valleys for 15 years. Lenara watched him with growing interest, her skin taking on hints of gold, curiosity, he guessed. You believe you can outmaneuver them? I know these mountains like they're part of me, Tom replied, sketching quick marks on one of his maps. Every cave, every stream, every game trail. More importantly, I know how to move through them without leaving traces. No technology required. He looked up at her. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Before she could answer, a high-pitched whine cut through the storm's background rumble. One of the shadow drones had picked up their trail. Tom was already moving, gathering essential supplies into a well-worn pack. "Your hunters want to play cat and mouse?" He helped Lenara to her feet, noting how she moved more smoothly now. Her natural healing abilities were impressive. "Welcome to Earth's wilderness. Let me show you how we've been surviving here since before we had fire." They slipped out through a hidden back entrance just as the first energy blast struck the cabin's front. Tom led them into the storm-dark forest, moving with the confidence of someone who could navigate these woods blindfolded. Lenara kept pace surprisingly well, her natural grace adapting quickly to his guidance on foot placement and movement patterns. As they vanished into the primal darkness of Earth's forests, Tom couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The galaxy's most advanced hunters were about to learn what every would-be conqueror throughout history had discovered: underestimating primitive humans was a dangerous mistake. Behind them, the night erupted with energy weapons and scanning beams. But the mountain storm swallowed their tracks, the ancient trees kept their secrets, and two figures, one born of the stars, one of the earth, moved like ghosts through the wilderness that had sheltered survivors for millennia. The real hunt was about to begin. Dawn broke over the mountain peaks, painting the clouds in shades of gold and crimson. Tom and Lenara rested in a natural cave behind a waterfall, the cascading water masking their heat signatures from the Void Hunter's scanners. 3 days of constant movement had forged something between them that transcended their different origins. "Your body temperature fluctuates with your emotions," Tom observed, checking the makeshift bandage on Lenara's arm. Her wounds were nearly healed now, leaving intricate patterns that glowed like starlight. "It's beautiful." Lenara's skin rippled with waves of rose and gold, a reaction Tom had started to recognize as their equivalent of a blush. "Among my people, such direct observations would be considered quite forward," her translator displayed, though her mercury eyes held a glimmer of amusement. "Sorry," Tom grinned, not looking sorry at all. Just a primitive human speaking his mind. Their playful moment was interrupted by a sound that didn't belong in these mountains, a high-pitched whine that made their teeth vibrate. Both pressed deeper into the cave's shadows as one of the Void Hunters passed overhead, its black armor seeming to absorb the morning light. "They're getting closer," Lenara's translator flickered. "Their quantum grid is adapting to the mineral interference. Soon." She stopped as Tom held up his hand, head tilted. Years of survival experience had taught him to trust his instincts. Something was wrong. The forest had gone too quiet. The explosion came from below, the cave floor erupting as a Void Hunter burst through the rock itself. Its armor rippled like liquid shadow, faceless helmet oriented toward Lenara with predatory precision. Energy weapons hummed to life. What happened next surprised everyone, especially the hunter. Tom moved with the fluid grace of someone who had spent a lifetime in wilderness combat. His walking staff, actually a hardened steel core wrapped in wood, swept the hunter's legs while his other hand flung a handful of iron-rich magnetic sand into its sensor array. The hunter's advanced targeting systems, calibrated for energy weapons and quantum signatures, were temporarily blinded by the primitive attack. But the real surprise came from Lenara. Her skin erupted with brilliant light, pulsing waves of energy that sent the hunter staggering backward. "The royal bloodline carries more than just titles," she said, her translator struggling to keep up as her voice rang with harmonic overtones. "We were engineered to channel stellar energy in times of need." The hunter recovered quickly, its armor adapting to both threats. It launched a barrage of energy bolts that Tom and Lenara barely dodged, the cave wall melting where they struck. Tom rolled behind a boulder, mind racing. All his wilderness skills wouldn't matter much if that thing vaporized their cover. "Lenara," he shouted. "The waterfall. Can you channel its energy?" Her mercury eyes widened with understanding. While the hunter advanced, she pressed her hand against the cave wall, connecting with the thundering water beyond. Her skin began to glow brighter, patterns swirling with increasing speed. Tom burst from cover, drawing the hunter's fire. His movements were unpredictable, using every trick he'd learned from tracking mountain lions and bears. The hunter's advanced combat algorithms struggled to predict his seemingly chaotic pattern. That's when Lenara released the energy she'd absorbed from the waterfall. A torrent of supercharged water burst through the cave wall, catching the hunter in a blast that overwhelmed its electrical systems. The combination of natural force and alien energy sent it tumbling out of the cave, down into the misty depths below. That was. Lenara swayed slightly, her skin dimmed to a pale blue. Tom caught her before she could fall. Rather exciting. "You're full of surprises, Your Highness," Tom said softly, still holding her. Their faces were very close now, her alien features somehow more beautiful for their strangeness. "As are you, my primitive human," her translator flickered, but her tone needed no interpretation. The air between them felt charged with more than just residual energy. A distant explosion reminded them of their situation. More hunters would come, drawn by their colleagues' disappearance. But as they prepared to move on, something had shifted between them. Two beings from opposite ends of the galaxy, finding in each other something that transcended the boundaries of their species. "They'll be expecting us to go deeper into the wilderness," Tom said, checking their supplies. "So we're going to do something really primitive, we're going to hide in plain sight." Lenara's skin shimmered with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Tom smiled, a plan forming. "There's a small town in the valley. Tourists visit all the time, wearing all sorts of weird clothes and acting strange. With a few adjustments, you could pass for an eccentric artist or fashion model. Sometimes the best way to hide is to be seen. You continue to challenge everything I was taught about underdeveloped worlds," Lenara's translator displayed, her skin glowing with warm colors. "Good," Tom said, leading the way down a hidden trail. "Keep underestimating us. It's worked out pretty well so far." As they descended toward civilization, both knew they were heading into dangerous territory, not just because of the hunters, but because of the growing feelings between them. A princess of the stars and a ranger of the mountains, drawn together by fate and kept together by something deeper than either had expected to find. The next phase of their journey would test not just their survival skills, but their hearts as well. The small mountain town of Pine Valley had seen its share of unusual tourists, but none quite like the striking woman with the iridescent skin condition and her rugged local guide. Tom had borrowed clothes from a thrift store, a long bohemian dress and wide-brimmed hat that helped conceal Lenara's otherworldly features. Her natural grace and exotic appearance drew curious glances, but in a town used to eccentric artists and wealthy vacationers, they blended into the background. They sat in a corner booth of the local diner, Lenara fascinated by the simple pleasure of real, non-synthesized coffee. Her skin rippled with delight at each sip, drawing admiring looks from other patrons who assumed it was some kind of advanced fashion technology. "Your species truly excels at creating comfort in primitive conditions," her translator displayed, the holographic text barely visible in the morning light. "This building would be considered desperately outdated on any Concordat world, yet it feels homey," Tom suggested, scanning the diner's other customers out of habit. After a week of running, paranoia had become second nature. "Alive," Lenara corrected. "Our cities are perfect, sterile. This place has character, history, imperfections that make it real." Their peaceful moment shattered as every electronic device in the diner suddenly went dead. The lights flickered, and through the window, they saw cars stalling in the street. Tom's hand found Lenara's under the table, they both knew what this meant. Before they could move, the diner's door opened. A figure entered that made even Lenara's breath catch. Tall and regal, wearing what appeared to be an expertly tailored Earth business suit, the man radiated authority. His skin had the same pearlescent quality as Lenara's, but with patterns that blazed like captured constellations. "Father," Lenara's translator managed before failing completely. The High Sovereign of the Stellar Concordat stood in a small-town diner, thousands of light-years from his throne, looking at his daughter and the human who had protected her. The other customers seemed frozen, likely caught in some kind of stasis field. "My child," his voice somehow translated itself, carrying harmonics that made the windows vibrate. "When our sensors detected your presence on this unregistered world, I feared the worst. Instead, I find you, drinking coffee." Tom stood slowly, placing himself slightly in front of Lenara. The High Sovereign's eyes, swirling galaxies rather than Lenara's Mercury, fixed on him with ancient intelligence. "You are the Earth native who has been protecting my daughter," he stated. "Our intelligence suggests you've managed to defeat several Void Hunters using nothing but primitive tools and knowledge of the local terrain. Most impressive." "Your Majesty," Tom bowed slightly, keeping his voice steady. "I'm just a forest ranger who found someone who needed help." "A forest ranger," the Sovereign mused, "who has demonstrated more innovation and adaptability than our Empire's best warriors. Perhaps there is more to this world than our initial surveys suggested." Lenara stood, her bearing every inch a princess despite her thrift store disguise. She addressed her father in their native tongue, musical syllables filling the air with complex harmonies. Tom couldn't understand the words, but the emotion behind them was clear. She was defending him, and Earth. The High Sovereign's response was interrupted by a sound that made them all tense, the distinctive hum of Void Hunter weapons powering up. Through the diner's windows, they could see multiple black-armored figures materializing in the street. "It seems," the Sovereign said calmly, "that the conspirators have decided to be bold. Attacking in my presence, either desperate or supremely confident." Tom was already moving, his mind racing through options. "Your Majesty, this diner has a basement access to old mining tunnels. The mineral content would." "Peace, Forest Ranger," the Sovereign raised a hand. "While your tactical thinking is admirable, this is now a matter of imperial justice." The air around him began to shimmer with power. Tom had thought Lenara's energy manipulation was impressive, her father's was on another scale entirely. Reality itself seemed to bend around him. But before the Sovereign could act, one of the hunters fired. The energy bolt moved with impossible speed, aimed not at Lenara or her father, but at Tom. Time seemed to slow as the primitive human faced certain death from advanced alien technology. What happened next would be talked about in the Concordat for centuries to come. Lenara moved faster than anyone thought possible, her skin blazing with gathered power. At the same time, Tom's reflexes and survival instincts kicked in. They met in the middle, her energy field merging with his natural movement. The energy bolt didn't just miss, it reversed course, caught in the impossible interaction between advanced alien power and pure human instinct. The hunter who fired was destroyed by its own weapon. The High Sovereign watched this display with obvious fascination. "Most unexpected," he said, as the remaining hunters prepared for a full assault. "It seems, my daughter, that your time on this primitive world has led to some interesting developments." Outside, more hunters appeared, their weapons charging. Inside, a princess of the stars stood with her human protector, both ready to fight. And between them all, the most powerful being in the known galaxy smiled like someone who had just discovered something wonderful and new. The quiet mountain town of Pine Valley was about to witness a convergence of worlds that would change the course of human and alien history forever. The small town of Pine Valley had never witnessed anything like it. Energy bolts crisscrossed the morning air as Void Hunters engaged in battle with the High Sovereign of the Stellar Concordat. Reality warped around them as advanced technology clashed with powers that bordered on the divine. Yet it was the scene in the diner that truly made history. Tom and Lenara stood back to back, surrounded by hunters who had breached the building. Her skin blazed like a newborn star, his movements flowed like water. They had fought together so often now that they moved as one, her energy powers amplified by his instinctive understanding of natural forces. "The human continues to surprise," one hunter's mechanically enhanced voice declared. Our predictive algorithms cannot map his movements. That's the problem with machines, Tom said, using a broken coffee pot to scatter the mineral-rich local water at their sensors. You can only predict what you understand. Lenara's power surged through the conductive liquid, overloading two hunters' systems. But more kept coming. Outside, even her father was being pressed back by sheer numbers. The conspirators had committed everything to this attack. I'm curious, Tom said conversationally, ducking under an energy blade. Your advanced civilization never wondered why Earth species survived multiple extinction events? Why life here is so adaptable? The nearest hunter paused, sensors whirring. Explain. My world has been trying to kill us since before we walked upright. Tom grabbed Lenara's hand, feeling her power sink with his movements. We learned to survive by understanding one simple truth: nature always wins in the end. He pulled her into a complex spin that would have looked at home in a dance hall. Her energy field expanded with the movement, creating a vortex that caught the artificial gravity generators of the hunter's armor. At the same time, Tom kicked over the diner's old radiator, sending a spray of rusty water across the floor. The combination of spinning gravitational forces and conductive liquid created a chain reaction. Hunter after hunter short-circuited, their advanced technology overwhelmed by the most basic principles of physics. Outside, the High Sovereign witnessed this display with growing appreciation. Remarkable, he said, casually deflecting energy bolts. Perhaps we have grown too dependent on technological solutions. The leader of the Void Hunters emerged then, its armor more advanced than the others. Your Majesty, its voice grated. The Concordat must evolve. Organic life is too inefficient, too unpredictable. Look at your daughter, consorting with a primitive species. We offer perfect order. Perfect order, the Sovereign mused, looking at Tom and Lenara as they emerged from the diner. Like the order of a crystal, beautiful, but dead. I see now why the Ancient Ones chose this world to seed with life. Earth's chaos breeds innovation. Its harshness breeds strength. The hunter leader raised its weapon. Then the entire experiment must end. What happened next exceeded even the Sovereign's expectations. As the hunter fired a weapon designed to unravel the fabric of space itself, Tom did something purely human: he improvised. Grabbing a cracked mirror from the diner wall, he angled it precisely while Lenara channeled her power through it. The quantum beam reflected, amplified by her energy and the mirror's silver backing. The hunter leader's own weapon became its undoing. Where advanced technology failed, a primitive mirror and human intuition succeeded. In the aftermath, as Imperial ships descended from orbit to secure the area, the High Sovereign made an unprecedented decision. The Concordat has grown stagnant, he declared. We forgot that true strength comes from adaptation, from the marriage of wisdom and innovation. He looked at Tom and Lenara, standing together, neither fully releasing the other's hand. Perhaps it is time for new connections to be forged. Father? Lenara's skin rippled with hope. Earth will be offered membership in the Concordat, the Sovereign declared. Not as a primitive world to be uplifted, but as a source of vital perspective. And you, my daughter, will serve as ambassador, with your human protector, if he agrees. Tom looked at Lenara, seeing in her mercury eyes the same wonder he felt. Well, he said with a smile, I suppose the mountains will still be here when we visit. Visit often, the Sovereign advised. For in forgetting our connection to natural worlds, we nearly lost ourselves. Your Earth has much to teach us. As the morning sun rose over Pine Valley, humans emerged from their homes to find their world forever changed. A princess of the stars and a ranger of the mountains had bridged the gap between two civilizations, proving that true strength lies not in technological advancement, but in the wisdom to know when to embrace the primitive, the natural, and the beautifully imperfect. And in the years that followed, when citizens of the Concordat spoke of Earth, they did not speak of a primitive world, but of the planet that reminded the galaxy what it meant to be truly alive.